Thanks for taking a few minutes and take a look at this video with us. What we'd like to do today with our great patient today, Jeff, is we'd like to spend a little bit of time showing you some of the do's and some of the don'ts when it comes to the full arch impressions that we need for oral appliances that are going to be used for dental sleep medicine. Clearly the consideration here is that the entire arch, the full arch, each tooth, each interproximal area, everywhere that we want to capture a little retention or undercut or fit, has to be done extremely well, exquisitely well, for two reasons. One, we want these appliances to actually fit and serve in a way that they're like a retainer, that we don't get any tooth movement. To do that, we need an accurate representation of what's there. The second reason is, we live in a digital world, and if I'm going to take an analog impression, it has to be so accurate that it fits seamlessly into that digital world. And in order to do so, we get this model, we get this digital copy of what we're going to do that's so accurate that when we mill it out of the solid pucks of PMMA and other materials, they fit exquisitely well. They only do that if we start with excellence in so we can get excellence out. What I'd like to do now is show you how to take a George gauge bite. It's the #1 type of bite relationship that we get in the laboratory with these cases. There's two components here. There's bite forks, and then there's a bite fork holder, which has two little screw knobs on it. The one on the top controls the bite fork here, and the one on the bottom controls this small incisal opening for his lower anteriors. So first I'll actually fit this little lower edge over Jeff's teeth. I'll loosen this. I'll tighten this down across his teeth so that it fits comfortably. Feel all right, Jeff? Mm-hmm. I'll tighten that down. Excellent. And then I'll take, in this case, I'm going to first take the gray, and they come in two different colors because the gray and the white have different thicknesses. You can see this little notch here is a little different on them, and they have different sizes. So I'm going to take first the gray one, and I'm going to put it in here, slide it right into this top notch, and then I'm going to have him just close down over both of those. And then I'm going to first look back here and make sure that I've got, you just go in your normal bite, thank you. I'm just going to look back here and see if he's got enough clearance, because I need 3 millimeters between his upper and lower incisal edges. And you've got to watch for cuss tips hanging down or excessive curve of speed. And if I look back there, it's pretty close back there. It's close enough that I'm pretty sure on that second molar I don't have clearance. So I'm going to have Jeff just open. I'm going to remove this gray bite fork. I'll put in the milky white one and check that, because that's got a little bit thicker pad there. Oh yeah, look how much more room we've got back there. That's excellent. Now I know I've got 3 millimeters with a clearance. I might even have 4 there, so that's plenty. And now I'm going to stand up above him, and I'm going to have Jeff go through his range of motion forward and back. And there's a millimeter rule right here in the front. Thank you. Come back. Okay. Jeff, slide forward and back and forward and back. And one more time. Okay. Oh, let me do that one more. Slip that back on there. Okay. Forward and back. Excellent. Okay. And open. So when we take a look at Jeff's range of motion, he goes from a positive, right around 6 millimeters, to a -5 millimeters. He's got about an 11 millimeter range of motion. So I might want to start him at about 60% of that range. So if here's his normal position, he's protruded all the way, I might want 6.6 millimeters, or almost 7 millimeters, of that range of motion. So I simply loosen the screw, come forward, and count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 millimeters into that range of motion. That's 6.6, I'm rounding it up to 7. And that's going to be where I want him to place his mandible when I take his bite. Close together. Oop, slide forward. There you go, right about there. Can you feel that there, Jeff? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I take a look at where the tray is, where the bite fork is, and where I'll need to put some impression material. And I'll need to have it sticking out just a little bit there. So I'm going to borrow this back from him, and I'm going to put some material on here. Put it on both the upper and the lower. And Jeff, I'm going to have you just bite back into that. Excellent. And hold that there. Great. And what we're doing now is we're capturing an upper and lower bite impression on the bite fork at the position that we determined to be about 6.6 millimeters into an 11 millimeter range of motion. 60% of the range of motion. The futard desets very quickly, so there's no real time for the patient to wait. Go ahead and open, Jeff. Beautiful. And now what I do is I simply loosen this screw and I send in this bite fork with the bite material on it to allow the lab to mount the models. There are so many different components to deciding how to take the best impression. Now Jeff and I make for an interesting comparable when selecting trays. For example, we're both, what, about 6'3", and both an incredibly well-built physique of about 230 pounds. A couple of wrought iron steel with tiger muscle over the top. And I've got 3 different size trays here. And interestingly though, I'm a large, and generally with this large you might even soften these exterior flanges for me and bend them out just a little bit. Jeff's a medium. So it isn't like we look at somebody and decide this is the tray, because if I try to put this in Jeff's mouth, he's going to bring his right undercup up under my chin. He's not going to be very happy. And if I try to put the small in, Jeff, would you slip that in? You know how to do that. It actually fits, but doesn't it fit close against your teeth? Yeah. So when it fits really closely against the teeth, it's very likely that we're going to get some interference from the tray instead of getting accurate impression material. And that's an important consideration, tray selection and tray size. Hi. Today what we're going to be doing, and of course I'd normally be doing this with a mask on, but I want to make sure you can hear me loud and clear, because I do like the sound of my own voice, is we're mixing up some impression material, and I'm going to demonstrate for you a really predictable impression taking technique for full arch activities, and especially if you're going to make a sleep device for one of your patients, you're going to need an exquisite, great detailed full arch impression. And this technique comes from the orthodontic world, and it will do a great job of giving you an impression that you can count on predictably every single time. Exquisite detail. The only caveat to it is it uses a lot of material because it's full arch, and it takes just a little bit more time. Why? Well, because first we take an impression to make a custom tray in a sense, because we use a heavy body putty material. This is a Kettenbach material, and we're going to fill the tray, and then we're going to put a separating medium over the top, use that as a first wash impression, then put a light buddy wash on it. So it's 2 setup times. I'll be right back. So what I've done here is I filled the tray, and then I've put some saran wrap. You can use handy wrap, you can use Costco brand, anything like that. And we're going to take an upper impression using that as just a tray material. Seat that fully, making sure you see it extend up around the teeth beautifully. Jeff, you're an excellent patient, thank you for that. This particular material is a very fast set material, so you've got between a minute and a minute and a half working time depending on temperature. And then the in-mouth set time is 2 minutes. The same is true with the light body. Good. Now what you can see here is we've got an excellent impression. Looks like a very nice impression. A little muddled looking, a little unclear in some areas, and that's because of this layer, this separating material layer. If I remove that, what I've got here is an excellent custom tray. And I can fill that tray with a light body material, take a wash, and have an exquisite detailed impression. Watch this. I'll generally only fill the area that's tooth-borne here. Make sure that I have that nicely filled up. Return that tray to the mouth. Thank you, Jeff. Seat that fully. And then watch the timer for 2 minutes. Now we'll remove the tray. It's been 2 minutes. Thank you, Jeff. And what you can see is an excellent impression with exquisite detail of every little part. Now, even though I only filled the tooth-borne areas, you can see how the material extrudes out and around, fills the palate, all the intergingival areas. It's just beautifully detailed. 2 minutes for the heavy body, 2 minutes for the light body. So you've got a total of 4 minutes in the patient's mouth and a little bit of prep time in between. Really accurate. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to show you some don'ts, some ways to not take impressions, some mistakes that are commonly made. And there's different examples of them. Let's take a look. This time I'm going to show you two things at the same time. This material, although mixed, isn't mixed 100%. You can see a little bit of some blonde swirls through there. And that creates some inconsistency in the setup and the expansion and contraction of the material. The second thing I'm going to do is try and save some time. And so if I don't have to do two impressions, and I put the light body on right now, just like I would do the normal full arch impression, I might be able to get away with taking two impressions instead of one. What do you think, Jeff? We'll save 2 minutes in his mouth. He's excited. So now I'm using a heavy body to carry and compress the light body into position at the same time. This is probably the technique I would have gone to first and foremost, just like I would be doing for crown and bridge, except I'd be using the light body over and around the preparation sites. And then using the heavy body in the tray to go ahead and drive that light body into all the detailed areas. That works really nicely for a quadrant, maybe even a full arch impression where you've only got a few prepared teeth. The reason it works so nicely is because you've isolated those areas, you've dried them, you've put the material directly on them. Works great. And if we have some inconsistencies or inaccuracies in a little buccal corridor or in between a couple of teeth, or we've got a bubble on the proximal or a buccal or a spot on the tooth, it doesn't really matter as long as it doesn't impact the preparation area and the opposing dentition. Here, every tooth is like a preparation. Every opposing tooth is presented with one of the restorative teeth opposite it. So every single tooth in the upper and the lower arch needs to be captured exquisitely. Okay, we're going to go ahead and remove this impression. And let's see what we got. Well, excellent detail in some of these areas, but if you can see right down in there looks like some poles up across there. And then in this back corner I seem to be missing and a little deficient. This technique becomes a little bit too iffy. I'm relying way too heavily on the heavy body material, and it just doesn't have the accuracy or the detail that the light body does. The two-stage, two-impression technique, just like they teach you for orthodontics, full arch dentistry, is really the ideal type of impression to take. There are so many considerations when we're taking an impression. Here I've actually got a tray that's a little bit underfilled, so when I cover it with the saran wrap and place it into the patient's mouth, although I'm going to get an impression, I'm probably not going to get good adaptation and good areas covered all the way around, and that can be a challenge. Now you can see as I remove this saran wrap and you take a look at this impression that was a little bit underfilled, I've got pretty good adaptation here in the anterior region. It starts to thin out and disappear into this corner and into this corner. And so now I start to do and play with a little, what I would call a little makeup light body. So I'm going to go ahead and take a wash of this just to show you how when the first step isn't done correctly, I can't really make it up in the second step. I'm going to have trouble filling the palate, and I'm going to have trouble getting these back corners. Let me show you that. So as I come along and I fill this tray, just like I would taking a good impression, I fill all the dentate areas very nicely. I realize I have some deficiencies, so I paint a little bit of extra material back there and a little bit of extra material back here. And let's see what we can get. Thank you, Jeff. So now we're going to remove this impression and we'll take a look. And you can see that It's filled in a little bit of these back corner areas for me pretty nicely, but it's a little bit on the thin side. Also up in here in front. Thank goodness those aren't terribly critical areas for this type of impression, but I haven't come anywhere near filling the palette. Now I may still get away with an impression like this once in a while. It depends on how much coverage we've got with the type of appliance that we're using. In this case, if we're using a Micro 2, which is lingualist and doesn't take up as much space, then I'm probably still going to be okay in terms of my coverage in those areas. But it just makes it so iffy when that first tray doesn't really cover the area you want to see.